here to talk about The Iron Triangle, a 1989 Vietnam War movie directed by Eric Weston, who you may know from the movie Evil Speak. And this one stars Beau Bridges. Now, this was a kind of a rash of, kind of almost like a fad in the 80s. Vietnam War movies were somewhat popular, and you had the kind of like the big guns like Full Metal Jacket and Platoon, but there were a number of smaller budgeted movies that kind of came out as well. Plus, you know, TV shows like China Beach and Tour of Duty. So we are talking about The Iron Triangle, and this is apparently based on a journal that was found from a real VC soldier, and he basically described the kind of scenario where there was an altercation between the American soldiers and the Viet Cong, and there was basically an American officer who decided not to shoot this particular kind of VC because he was unarmed at the time. And then this kind of soldier later got, this kind of American soldier later on got captured, and this VC ended up having a kind of relationship almost, a kind of a somewhat of a building of a mutual respect between this kind of Viet Cong guerrilla fighter and this American officer, one of equal kind of respect, and both of them kind of had, you know, a morality towards them. That's the kind of the basis of this story. Beau Bridges plays this American captain who, you know, during an assault doesn't kind of shoot this particular kind of Viet Cong, and you know what I've kind of said it happens. So what this movie tries to do is tell both sides of the stories, and it's actually somewhat of an anti-war movie in a lot of ways, despite there being, you know, quite a lot of kind of gun battles and things like that. Trying to kind of say that behind every gun there is, you know, a soldier, and that soldier has, you know, his own kind of life, his own kind of point of views, and we learn that both the American side in this movie, you know, the characters on the kind of the both sides, the Americans and the Viet Cong, you know, have complex kind of relationships with their kind of fellow soldiers, and this is one of the kind of the few, I would say, Vietnam movies that does focus more on the kind of the VC side, and we learn that this particular kind of VC soldier, you know, he believes in the cause and everything, but he has kind of like a rivalry with this kind of other kind of main kind of VC guy, and they have kind of differing opinions about what should done. He's kind of haunted by the kind of lives he's had to take, very much like, you know, you kind of see from a lot of the perspective from American soldiers that you can get, but we rarely see it from the VC side. So this movie tries to have a story of both these sides, trying to say that, you know, we're not all that different. That's the kind of the basic idea of this film. So let's talk about, first of all, I think works in this movie's favour. I do think this does give it a somewhat of a unique flavour, having essentially both sides equally kind of represented, and it is one of the few stories where you'll see, you know, characters that are developed from the kind of the VC side, rather than kind of depicting them as more kind of faceless kind of enemies. So that just does give it a kind of a unique feel, and it's also interesting to kind of see how the kind of the tactics different and things like this. And this American soldier played by Beau Bridges, you know, starts to understand how, you know, this kind of guerrilla tactics that they're using, and it's different from their more overt kind of military actions, and it's the differing styles of war. So that's all you know, quite an interesting idea here, seeing these two different sides collide. And I have to say, I think they do a good job, particularly with the kind of the Vietnamese side, of kind of giving you kind of somewhat kind of more fleshed out characters, you know, between this guy and this other, and his rival, between this guy and his kind of like his friend, potential kind of love interest, and the kind of their kind of point of view, which I think is obviously not shown in many kind of you know, Vietnam era kind of war films. So it makes it quite an interesting premise, but it's not without kind of its kind of set pieces as well. There is quite a lot of, you know, large scale kind of combat sequences in the end. You know, we have this kind of this assault on this particular kind of village, and it's still, you know, there are some impressively staged sequences involving lots of extras and things like this, you know, pyrotechnics, helicopters, etc, etc. So you won't be kind of, it's not too much leaning into the drama. How I feel the movie is kind of relatively kind of well paced in that regard. I mean, I will say that I feel the crux story doesn't really get started until about the halfway mark, maybe even a little bit beyond that. But nonetheless, I do feel this movie has that kind of somewhat of a unique flavour to it. I think the acting is pretty good. I think Beau Bridges kind of makes a somewhat kind of, I'm going to say fallible but likeable character who has a strong moral centre, and that's mirrored with the kind of the guy who plays this kind of VC soldier as well. And I do think they do, an okay kind of performance. There is kind of one issue which we'll come on to, but I think the acting for the most part is kind of fairly kind of good. The movie's not kind of overly long. I think it's it's easily kind of digestible, and kind of you can follow what's going on, and will, I think, make you think about kind of there's two sides to kind of every story. I think the main issues with this one, it definitely does feel like lower budget compared to some of the kind of the larger, more well-known films, and it also doesn't feel authentic at times. For example, I feel there's a little bit of confusion in regards to the way the VC are portrayed here, because they all speak English. Now, obviously, they wouldn't be kind of speaking English, and that's purely done to make it more digestible for kind of for Western audiences. But it also kind of doesn't make it feel authentic, if that makes sense. And I also have to say that they have a little bit of a confused kind of message about how that's portrayed in real terms, because we learn that Beau Bridges' character does speak Vietnamese, but we never see him speak Vietnamese. He's always speaking English, and the Vietnamese are speaking kind of English. So I'm thinking, are they meant to be speaking Vietnamese, but we are just kind of in the film universe that we kind of are meant to be just hearing English, but we're meant to believe that they're speaking Vietnamese, for example. But then again, I don't know about the others. Are they other American soldiers? Are they meant to be understanding what's going on? So I don't know if the conceit really kind of works. And even if they just had spoken Vietnamese, I just think it would have had given it this kind of this little bit of authenticity, which I think is lacking. I have to say this, well, I think the music is really not kind of inclusive of what's kind of going on. I feel the music score here is not bad music exactly, but it doesn't really fit the movie, if that makes sense. You don't get those kind of like those sweeping operatic themes that you sometimes see in films, or the kind of the 60s, 70s era music. To me, the music feels like it's really kind of ill-fitting to what's kind of happening on kind of screen there, which I didn't think was particularly good. I have to say, even though I quite like the kind of the characters, the way they're kind of built up from the perspective of Beau Bridges' character and the kind of this VC soldier whose name is Ho, I didn't really feel we got to know anyone else, to be honest with you. And what kind of characterization we did get was somewhat sparse. For example, I suppose the next character that we could have really feel like we know is this kind of rival to Ho, who's the kind of the VC soldier we are see through the eyes of a protagonist. But they kind of seem like thinly drawn characters, and when we have for example, our American side, we don't really feel like anyone else has much kind of, much of a character, much fleshed out. So you are just kind of seeing like, neighbourless kind of people on screen, and you don't really feel invested in that kind of thing. And I have to say, as much as I think you get a good idea of these kind of characters played by Beau Bridges, who plays this kind of captain, and the guy who plays this this VC, I don't know, I think they're maybe a little bit too altruistic in some degrees. They don't seem to be really nuanced characters, and they almost seem kind of too similar, and I don't know, maybe a little bit basic in regards to their kind of character work here. And as I say, I feel the point of the movie was this kind of showing you the two sides of the same coin, really, or the other side of the mirror. And we don't really get that until kind of gone past the halfway mark, is where these two characters meet. And I think it could have been expanded upon, and you get this relationship is therefore quite truncated. And they're not really like, I wouldn't say they become friends, but they certainly have a respect for each other. But I feel it's kind of that relationship building is almost too short, so you don't really feel you don't really feel the relationship as much in a kind of a narrative level. And the first half of the movie I felt could have been re-edited to have more time dedicated to that, in my opinion anyway. So overall, I can understand why this one never really kind of like hits as much as kind of like Platoon or Full Metal Jacket, or even has the kind of the cult status of a much lower budget one like 84 Charlie Mopic, for example, or you know, kind of Hamburger Hill, which I suppose, you know, is maybe its nearest film. So it's okay. I just don't think it's a, you know, it has a good message, but I don't think it's a particularly well-crafted movie exactly. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.